The Apache's rotors slowed. Gray smoke streamed from the fuselage. Soldiers below watched their air support limping away. "She's pulling out," someone muttered. Enemy gunfire cracked closer. They were about to be overrun. The radio crackled. A woman's voice, calm and cold. "Check 6. The Apache banked vertical, cannon swiveling backward. Brrr, rrr, rrr. The ridgeline erupted, enemy fire ceased. As the helicopter swept overhead, one soldier whispered, "Silent Hawk." But Silent Hawk was supposed to be dead. Captain Reina Navasquez stepped off the transport at Forward Operating Base, Coast, wearing a faded flight suit with no unit patches. 28 years old, European heritage, shoulder-length brown hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Her eyes carried something the others couldn't place, a depth that suggested she'd seen more than her age should allow. The Apache mechanics barely looked up from their maintenance checks. "Another transport pilot rotating through," one muttered, wiping grease from his hands. In the briefing room, Reina took a seat in the back corner. The mission commander outlined close air support protocols for upcoming operations in the Paktia province. When he asked for questions, veteran pilots raised hands, debated tactics, shared war stories from previous deployments. Reina said nothing during the lunch break. Conversations buzzed around the mess tent about weapon systems, engagement rules, enemy positions. Someone mentioned the difficulty of providing accurate fire support in mountainous terrain. A young gunner turned to Reina. "When's the last time you fired the M230 chain gun?" She spooned her MRI thoughtfully. "It's been a while." "Transport birds don't carry much firepower," he said with a knowing smile. Reina just nodded. The afternoon brought formation flying exercises, standard procedure. Experienced pilots led while newcomers followed, learning radio protocols and tactical spacing. When the flight leader called for volunteers to take point, 3 hands shot up immediately. Reina's didn't. She flew wing position, maintaining perfect distance and altitude, but never volunteered for complex maneuvers. When they practiced gun runs on target ranges, she hung back, letting others demonstrate their accuracy first. After landing, pilots gathered around the Apache hardstands, discussing performance, critiquing each other's approaches. They talked over Reina as if she weren't there. "The new girl's quiet," someone observed. "Probably nervous first deployment." Maybe. Transport pilots don't get much stick time with attack birds. That evening in the pilot's lounge, war stories flowed with the contraband beer. Tales of close calls, heroic rescues, enemy vehicles destroyed. Reina sat apart, reading a technical manual, while others recounted their greatest hits. A captain gestured toward her. "What about you? Any interesting stories from flying cargo runs?" "Not really," she replied without looking up. The group exchanged glances. In their world, pilots who stayed quiet usually had nothing worth saying. Over the following days, the pattern continued. Reina arrived early, flew competently but conservatively, and left without socializing. She never bragged, never one-upped anyone's stories, never pushed for high-profile missions. The other pilots developed a comfortable dismissal of her abilities. She became the transport girl, the quiet one. What's her name? During mission planning, they assigned her routine patrols while giving the exciting combat sorties to proven performers. Reina accepted every assignment without complaint. In the maintenance hangar, she spent extra time with her Apache, running pre-flight checks with unusual thoroughness. The crew chief noticed. She inspected systems that most pilots trusted to the mechanics: weapons targeting, countermeasure dispensers, engine temperature tolerances. "You don't need to check all that stuff," he told her. "We've got it covered." "Just being thorough," she said. But there was something else. In quiet moments, when she thought no one was watching, her eyes would scan the horizon with the intensity of someone reading a familiar book. Her hands moved over the controls with the muscle memory that spoke of thousands of flight hours, not hundreds. In the breast pocket of Raina's flight suit, she kept a small piece of burned parachute cord marked with the numbers 719, a timestamp she'd never explained to anyone. 3 weeks into her rotation, the mission everyone had been waiting for finally came down. Operation Valkyrie, a high-risk extraction of a SEAL team trapped in the Spingar Mountains near the Pakistani border. Intelligence indicated heavy enemy presence, sophisticated air defenses, and terrain that had already claimed 2 helicopters in previous operations. The squadron commander briefed his best pilots. Captain Viper Morrison would lead in Apache 1. Major Hawkeye Chen would fly Apache 2. Both were seasoned combat veterans with multiple deployments and confirmed kills. Raina wasn't even invited to the initial planning session. She learned about the mission secondhand, overhearing conversations in the mess hall. When she approached the operations officer about participation, he barely looked up from his clipboard. "We need experienced attack pilots for this one. Vasquez, you'll stay back and handle base security. Patrol. I can." That's final. The night before the mission, Raina sat alone in her quarters, meticulously cleaning and checking her sidearm, a ritual that seemed oddly elaborate for someone flying routine patrols. She laid out her gear with precision: survival radio, emergency beacon, water purification tablets, and a small tactical knife with a worn grip that suggested years of use. In the breast pocket of Raina's flight suit, she kept a small piece of burned parachute cord marked with the numbers 719, a timestamp she'd never explained to anyone. Dawn brought the sound of rotors spinning up. Through her window, Raina watched Viper and Hawkeye lift off into the gray morning, their Apaches loaded with Hellfire missiles and maximum ammunition. Their mission? Provide close air support for the SEAL team in the most dangerous valley in Afghanistan. Raina suited up for another milk run, routine patrol of the perimeter, checking on outposts, flying in safe circles while the real war happened elsewhere. But 15 minutes into her patrol, everything changed. The radio erupted with desperate voices. "Apache 1 is hit. Apache 1 is going down." Viper's helicopter had taken an RPG hit to the tail rotor. Emergency auto-rotation, crash landing in hostile territory. Hawkeye's frantic voice followed. "I've got mechanical failure, oil pressure dropping. I need immediate RTB." Within minutes, the extraction mission had lost both attack helicopters. The SEAL team was stranded, surrounded and taking heavy fire. No air support, no extraction possible. The base commander's voice cut through the chaos. "Any available aircraft respond immediately to Valkyrie emergency." Raina keyed her radio. "Coast Base, this is Apache 3. I am 15 minutes out from the AO." Long pause. Static. "Apache 3, negative. Return to base immediately. We're launching the reserve birds." "Sir, I'm already airborne and closest to the target." "Vasquez, you are ordered to return to base. The reserve team will handle this." But as Raina banked toward home, she could hear the SEAL team leaders' increasingly desperate radio calls. They were down to their last magazine. Enemy forces were closing from 3 sides. Extraction window closing fast. The reserve Apaches were still 30 minutes away. Raina made a choice that would change everything. She killed her transponder, switched to an encrypted frequency that shouldn't have existed in her radio, and banked hard toward the mountains. "Coast Base, this is Silent Hawk. I'm going dark." The response came immediately in a voice that carried authority beyond any rank. "Structure copy. Silent Hawk, you are cleared hot. All assets are yours." Meanwhile, at Coast, the communications officer stared at his screen in confusion. "Sir, we've lost contact with Apache 3. "Lost contact? How?" Her transponder just disappeared. It's like she vanished. 25 minutes later, the SEAL team leader's voice crackled over the radio, breathless with relief. "Contact. We have an Apache overhead." "Where did he come from?" "Negative. All our birds are still en route."
Well, somebody's up here, and they're lighting up the whole mountainside. What the SEALs witnessed defied explanation. An Apache appeared from nowhere, flying impossibly low through terrain that should have been impossible to navigate. The helicopter moved like it was reading the enemy's mind, arriving at perfect angles, striking targets with surgical precision. But most unnervingly, the pilot seemed to know exactly where the enemy would be before they appeared. When reinforcements tried to flank the SEALs from the north, the Apache was already there, cannon ready. When an enemy mortar team set up on the ridgeline, 30-millimeter rounds found them before they could fire their first shot. The SEAL spotter, watching through high-powered optics, saw something that made his blood run cold. This pilot? Jesus Christ, I've seen this before. His team leader grabbed the radio. All stations, identify the Apache providing support. No response from any friendly unit. Around Raina's left wrist, barely visible beneath her flight gloves, was a braided red cord tied with 3 precise knots, the completion marker used by cracking unit operatives to mark successful life or death missions. 4 years earlier, Captain Reina Silent Hawk Vasquez had been the deadliest Apache pilot in the most classified unit the military had ever created. Cracking units, while conventional forces operated under rules of engagement and congressional oversight, Kraken existed in the shadows. No official records, no unit patches, no recognition. Their mission? Eliminate high-value targets that conventional forces couldn't touch, in places that didn't officially exist, using methods that Congress would never approve. Reina had been their ace. In 18 months of operations, she'd completed 47 missions with a 100% success rate. Her specialty? Appearing where the enemy least expected, striking with surgical precision, and vanishing without a trace. The Check 6 maneuver had become her signature, an impossible banking turn that allowed her to attack pursuers while appearing to retreat. Enemy forces learned to fear the sound of Apache rotors disappearing because it usually meant death was circling back around. Operation Iron Shield in 2019 had been her masterpiece. A Taliban commander with Russian backing had cornered a 20-man special operations team in the Coringal Valley. 3 Apache helicopters had already been shot down trying to extract them. The Pentagon was preparing to write off the entire team as acceptable losses. That's when Kraken deployed Silent Hawk, alone. Reina had studied the terrain for 3 days, memorizing every ridge, every cave, every possible enemy position. When she finally struck, it was like watching a ghost materialize from the mountains themselves. She'd swooped in from the west, using the setting sun as cover, and destroyed 4 enemy vehicles before they knew she was there. When reinforcements arrived from the north, she was already there, predicting their route perfectly. But the moment that made her legend came when enemy forces tried to outflank the trapped soldiers. As the Taliban fighters crept through a narrow canyon, confident they were unseen, Reina's Apache rose vertically from below the canyon rim, like a mechanical phoenix. Her 30-millimeter cannon had cut through the enemy formation in 30 seconds. 20 American soldiers walked out of that valley alive because of her. But cracking unit's existence was politically toxic. When news of their black operations began leaking to oversight committees, the Pentagon made a decision. The unit would be disbanded, all records destroyed, and personnel reassigned to conventional forces with their history scrubbed clean. Silent Hawk officially ceased to exist. Captain Reina Vasquez was transferred to transport duties, then eventually back to attack helicopters. But now she was just another pilot in the system. No special clearances, no classified missions, no recognition for the 47 operations that saved hundreds of American lives. She accepted it without complaint, as she'd accepted everything else. But today, watching the SEAL team that she just saved, Raina felt something she hadn't experienced in years: recognition. The team leader, Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen, studied her through his scope as she hovered overhead, providing overwatch, while they moved to the extraction point. "I know that flying," he murmured to his spotter. "What do you mean?" "The way she moves the aircraft, like she's not just flying it, she is it. I've only seen one pilot fly like that." After the successful extraction, the SEAL team was debriefed at Coast. During the session, Chen kept staring at Raina, who sat quietly in the back of the room, as usual, letting others take credit for the rescue. Finally, he spoke up. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" Raina looked up from her notes. "Sure. Were you ever in the Kringle about 4 years ago?" The room went quiet. Raina's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. "I've flown a lot of places," she said carefully. Chin stood up and walked over to her. "I was a corporal then, part of a team that got trapped in a valley for 3 days. Taliban had us surrounded. Command said we were expendable." He pulled up his sleeve, revealing a tattoo, a stylized Apache silhouette with the words 719 underneath. "That's the exact time our guardian angel showed up, saved all 20 of us. They told us the pilot was classified, that we'd never know who it was." He paused, studying her face. "But I remember that aircraft, the way it moved, like it was alive." The other SEALs in the room were listening now. One of them, a senior chief, stepped forward. "You're talking about Silent Hawk," he said quietly. "I heard stories about cracking unit, ghosts in the mountains, pilots who can make Apaches do impossible things." Raina remained perfectly still. Chen reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of burned parachute cord, identical to the one in Raina's flight suit. "We all kept a piece," he said, "from the bird that almost got shot down trying to save us before you showed up. The pilot gave it to us as a reminder that somebody always has our backs, even when we can't see them." He held it out to her. "I think this belongs to you." The room was dead silent. Every eye was on Raina. She looked at the cord, then at Chin, then at the faces of the men she just saved, for the second time in 4 years. Slowly, she reached into her breast pocket and pulled out her own piece of cord with 719 written in faded ink. "I told you all I'd be there," she said simply. "I just didn't mention it would be twice." The squadron commander, who had excluded her from every important mission, stared in disbelief. You're Silent Hawk?" Raina stood up, her quiet demeanor unchanged. Silent Hawk was a call sign for a unit that officially never existed. "I'm just Captain Vasquez." Chen shook his head. "No, ma'am. You're the reason I have a wife and kids today. You're the reason all of us made it home." He turned to address the room. "This woman flew alone into the most dangerous valley in Afghanistan and pulled off the most impossible rescue mission I've ever seen. And she's been sitting here for weeks, letting everyone treat her like she's some rookie transport pilot." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The pilot they dismissed as inexperienced was actually the most elite combat aviator any of them had ever met.
CTA type. I owe a debt if you've ever been saved by someone who never asked for recognition. The revelation changed everything and nothing. Word spread through the base like wildfire. The transport pilot was actually Silent Hawk, the ghost of Kraken unit. Men who dismissed her for weeks now looked at her with something approaching awe. But Raina didn't change. She still arrived early for briefings, still took the assignments no one else wanted, still sat quietly in the back while others dominated conversations. The only difference was, now people stopped talking when she walked into a room. The squadron commander approached her the next morning with a stack of papers. Vasquez, I'm putting you in for a distinguished flying cross, maybe a silver star. This rescue operation, combined with your previous records, no thank you, sir. He blinked. Excuse me? I don't need any awards. I was just doing my job. But your record, what you've accomplished, the Pentaton should know. Reyna looked at him with those same calm eyes. That seems too much, sir. The Pentagon already knows everything they need to know about what I've done. Some things are more valuable when they stay quiet. She walked away, leaving him standing there with unsigned commendation forms. But something had shifted in the younger pilots. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, fresh out of flight school, started showing up early to watch Reyna's pre-flight routines. She noticed how Reyna checked every system twice, how she studied weather patterns other pilots ignored, how she planned alternate routes for every mission. Captain Vasquez, Mitchell asked one morning, could you teach me that banking maneuver you did during the rescue? Reyna paused in her inspection of the rotor assembly. Which one? The check 6 turn? The way you came around behind the enemy position. For a moment, Reyna was quiet. Then she nodded toward the Apache. It's not about the maneuver. It's about knowing where your teammates are, even when they think you've left them behind. Over the following weeks, a small group began gathering around Reyna during maintenance periods. Young pilots, crew chiefs, even some of the SEALs she'd rescued. They didn't ask about classified missions or legendary operations. They asked practical questions. How do you read terrain at night? How do you predict enemy movements? How do you stay calm when everything goes wrong? Reyna answered them all with the same quiet precision she brought to everything else. Never take your eyes off your wingmen, she'd say, while demonstrating weapon system checks. The enemy will always attack or they think you're not watching. Trust your instruments, but trust your instincts more. Sometimes the machine tells you what should be happening. Your gut tells you what is happening. When someone needs help, you don't ask permission from people who aren't there. You act. Lieutenant Rodriguez, a gunner, who had been struggling with target acquisition, found himself improving rapidly under her subtle guidance. She never officially mentored him, never gave formal lessons. She just happened to be nearby when he needed advice, always ready with a quiet word or demonstration. How did you know I was having trouble with the targeting system? He asked one day. Because I remember what it was like to be new, she replied. And I remember the pilots who helped me when they didn't have to. One afternoon, performing routine maintenance, the ground crew discovered something painted on the side of Reyna's Apache. In small, precise letters, Silent Guardian, always watching 6. No one had seen who painted it. No one asked Reyna about it. But every pilot on base understood the message. Someone was always watching their backs, even when they couldn't see her. The young pilots began adopting small rituals they'd learned from watching her. Extra pre-flight checks, studying terrain maps for alternate routes, most importantly, keeping radio contact with teammates even when missions seemed routine. During a formation exercise 2 weeks later, Lieutenant Mitchell's Apache developed engine trouble over hostile territory. As she struggled with emergency procedures, her radio crackled with a familiar voice. Mitchell, this is Vasquez. I have eyes on you. Take the valley to your east. Follow it north. I'll cover your 6. Even though the mission was just training, even though the danger was minimal, Reyna had positioned herself to watch over the newer pilot, just as someone had once watched over her. Mitchell made it back safely. When she climbed out of her aircraft, she looked around for Reyna to say thank you, but Reyna was already gone, disappeared into the maintenance hangar, quietly preparing for the next mission where someone might need guardian angel they couldn't see. CTA type, I will live well. If you believe real skill is only valuable when used to protect others, Reyna reminds us that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is disappear at exactly the right moment, only to return when people need you most. The Check 6 call
isn't just military jargon for watching behind you. It's a philosophy. It means constantly thinking about the blind spots, the vulnerable moments, the places where your teammates are most exposed. In our civilian lives, we encounter people who need their six checked every day. The coworker struggling with the new project while everyone assumes they've got it handled. The friend going through a divorce who puts on a brave face. The neighbor whose lights have been out for 3 days straight. Real heroes don't announce themselves. They don't demand recognition or post about their good deeds on social media. They simply show up when needed, do what needs to be done, and fade back into the background. Raina taught those young pilots something more valuable than any flying technique: the difference between being skilled and being useful. Anyone can learn to fly an Apache helicopter, but it takes character to use that skill quietly, consistently in service of others. The burned parachute cord in her pocket wasn't a trophy. It was a reminder, a timestamp, marking the moment she learned that being the best means being there for others, even when, especially when, no one's watching. Think about the people who've checked your six throughout your life. The teacher who stayed after school to help you understand algebra, not because it was required, but because they saw you struggling. The friend who showed up at your door with pizza when your relationship ended without being asked. The boss who quietly fought for your promotion behind closed doors. These people rarely get the recognition they deserve. They don't demand it. Like Raina, they understand that the most meaningful victories happen in the shadows. But here's what's beautiful about the check six mentality. It spreads. When someone watches your back, you learn to watch someone else's. When someone catches you when you're falling, you become the kind of person who catches others. Those young pilots at Coast didn't just learn flying techniques from Raina. They learned how to be guardians, how to pay attention to the people around them, how to show up without being asked. Years from now, when they're senior pilots themselves, they'll pass the same lessons to the next generation, not through grand speeches or formal training programs, but through quiet example, by being present, by watching, by acting when others need help. Raina's story isn't really about military aviation or classified operations. It's about the choice we all face every day. Do we use our skills and knowledge to build ourselves up or to lift others up? The people who change the world aren't always the ones whose names end up in history books. Sometimes they're the ones who whisper check six at exactly the right moment, then disappear back into the crowd. Sometimes the person you think is new is actually the one who's been saving lives all along. If you believe in stories that touch the heart like this one, leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to Iron Heart Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten. Real people are creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI.